Hey class, Dr. Stevens here. Just want to make a quick video. I'll try to make it quick about APA that you're going to be involved in for this semester. APA, of course, is a publishing format for major publications in various disciplines, including education. And so that's what we'll be following here. You may have had some experience in others. Your English classes might have used MLA or some other format. And if you're familiar with one, then it shouldn't be too difficult to adjust to APA. But I just want to go over a few things that I'm really going to be watching for. In particular, first of all, let me say that APA calls for a running head and an abstract in your written work. I don't have a problem at all with you putting a running head in there, but for this particular course, I don't need to see an abstract. I think that's just extra work for you and for me. I wouldn't read an abstract anyway, so don't worry about that. Even though in real publication you would be expected to have an abstract in there, but for this course, don't worry about that. So what I expect to see is a title page. I'm just looking at some notes here. A title page is to be centered top and bottom, side to side, and it only needs to have three parts to it: your name, the name of the assignment, and the name of the course. Okay, you don't need to put my name on there or SUU or anything else, just your name, which assignment it is, and the course, and that's good enough. And that's all that goes on the title page, I guess, except for running head would also be on the title page. So once you begin the actual narrative of your the body of your narrative, you're going to have headings in the different sections of your work, and there are different types of headings, and they're each formatted differently. There's a main heading. Every new section will have a main heading, and the main heading is bold and centered, left to right. Interestingly enough, though, introduction and references are headings, but they are not main headings. So they are centered in the page, but they are not bolded. So it would be appropriate to have introduction be at the top of the first page, centered, not bold, and then have a main heading beneath that that is centered and bolded if that main heading is necessary and more descriptive of whatever is to follow. But typically, I would just see your paper start with an introduction. That would be the beginning. You would have a paragraph or two as an introduction. Then you would move on to either a new main heading or a secondary heading. So secondary headings are sort of subheadings within a section. They are, well, I'm not going to go into how they're formatted because you can find that out on your own. So there's secondary heading and then tertiary heading. So be familiar with how all of those headings are formatted and when it's appropriate to use each one. You don't necessarily have to have a main heading and then a second heading and then a tertiary heading. You can go from one main heading in a section to a new section with another main heading. So it's just whatever makes sense and works for that particular narrative. And as I noted, references at the end, that is a heading but not a main heading. So it's centered but not bold. Moving on. Everything in APA is double spaced. Everything is double spaced. So make sure that everything you write, from the title page to the body to block quotes to references and spacing between sections, it's all double spaced, and I'm aware of no exceptions to that. Talk real quick about quotes and block quotes. A regular in-text quote is a quote typically of less than, I think it's 40 words. And so if the quote is less than 40 words, you would just list that text, that quote within the text with quotation marks around it and cited accordingly. For a block quote of over 40 words, then that takes the form of a block, which is an indented block of text. It does not have a quotation mark around it because the block indicates that it is a quote. What you need to pay attention to here is that block quotes and in-text quotes are both cited differently, and essentially exact opposite rules apply to each one. I won't go into detail here, but you need to be familiar with how to correctly cite a block quote and how to correctly cite an in-text quote. All right? Citations within the text. There are a number of ways of doing that depending on how many authors you have and that sort of thing. You need to be familiar with the correct formatting of citations, how to list the authors, multiple authors. Typically, you do not list first names. It's surnames only and no initials. So it would just be the last name of the author. And if there's more than one, then you format it in a certain way. In your references at the end, those authors, they do have their initials, but only initials, not first or middle names, just the initials and surname, starting with the if there are multiple authors, they are not necessarily listed alphabetically. They are listed as the authors have listed them. So typically the one who was the primary source of that work is listed first. But if there's more than one, those authors are not necessarily listed alphabetically within that particular reference. However, on your reference page overall, all of your references from top to bottom, those are to be listed alphabetically by the first author's last name. So if one of your authors is Anderson, that would come before Jones, and Jones would come before Stevens, as an example. So your references are listed alphabetically from start to finish based on the author's last name. Just a caution with reference formatting. Typically, if you're reading a journal, at the end of it, it will have the reference for that journal. Don't just copy that reference from the web page and paste it into your document. It will not come in correct formatting. You could copy and paste it simply to have to avoid having to write it all out, but once you paste it, you're going to have to reformat it correctly. I've yet to see where copying a reference from a web page and pasting it into a Word document works correctly. It just doesn't work. And it's obvious that it isn't working. Typically, the font isn't the same. Oftentimes there will be some shading or highlighting behind the font itself. So if you copy and paste it, make sure that you then rewrite it so that it's formatted correctly. On a reference that's more than one line long, the first line is always justified to the left margin, and any subsequent lines are indented one tab stroke. And whenever we talk about indentation, it's a tab stroke, it's not 5 spaces. So when we learned how to type in junior high, we were taught that an indentation is 5 spaces on the 5 strokes of the tab of the space bar. That's not correct for APA. An indentation is a single stroke of the tab key. So make sure that you understand that correctly. In a reference, on the reference page, there's all kinds of issues and rules with commas, periods, italics, parentheses, and that sort of thing. And the APA manual is very clear on that, so make sure that you understand those and apply them correctly. There's probably a bunch more that I could cover, but this is already too long. But those are things I'm going to be looking at in your paper, and if a correction needs to be made, I will probably just, in Canvas, I will highlight the area that is incorrect, and I will probably just simply say APA as my comment, and I'm going to leave it to you to go and figure out what you did wrong and need to correct, because it would just take me far too much time to describe their error and how to do it correctly. If you have a question, you certainly can ask me, but I'm going to leave it to you to find the answer on your own, and if you can't, then you can come to me. So anyway, I hope that's helpful. That's what I'll be looking for in your submitted work. All of your work should be in a Word document, Microsoft Word document. I don't want to see a PDF. And I don't want to just see an RTF file. I want it in a Word document. As students, you have access to the university's resources for Microsoft products, and so make sure that you're utilizing those. Do your work on a computer with a keyboard. Don't try to do it on an iPad or a telephone. It's not going to work out. So do your work on a real computer as you would if you were going to be submitting this for actual publication. So what we're looking for is professional quality work here. So anyway, best wishes on that. Take care.